So the Conservatives say they won't back down, but at the end of the fall parliamentary sitting inches closer, will the government give in, or will more stalling tactics be on the agenda next week? Let's bring in our weekly journalist panel. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Joël-Denis Bellavance is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, and Kristy Kirkup is political reporter for the Globe and Mail. So we heard from the Conservative House leader, Andrew Scheer, earlier today, boasting about forcing MPs to stay in the House overnight to vote. Is this a winning strategy for the opposition? Is there any way the Liberals will give in? Bob, maybe we could start with you.
Well, no, because this is just a big game. This happens almost every end of Christmas and session and early in June. There's always some kind of a stunt like this. Let's not take it seriously. Certainly, I'm certain most people out there aren't paying the slightest bit of attention to it wisely.
As much as we do, anyway.
We're paid to do that. Look, they'll probably all be gone on the 15th. And it'll do it at late at night, and we'll wake up in the morning and they're all gone and so much for their big, we're going to leave and we're going to stall until the carbon tax is dropped on farmers. That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They don't expect it to happen. This is just a political stunt by the Conservatives to get some mileage with farmers and to try to stick it to the Liberals before everybody breaks for the Christmas holidays. So I wouldn't read a lot into this.
Jean-Denis, would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Political stunt. I mean, and I think it's meant to help the Conservative build bridges with the farmers. They're very strong on that one, but also raise money for the party. I think the political party, that is the Conservative Party, is a big. It's quite adept at raising money, using every event to make it a fundraising event, and their coffer is already very full. I mean, I think this year the Conservative Party will raise probably around $32 million in an off-election year, which is unheard of, a record. So Mr. Poilievre was in the House of Commons after the day of the vote, bringing some McDonald's to the troops, to do a big rah-rah-rah. But he skipped most of the votes because he went to Montreal to do some fundraising at the same time. So, as Bob said, a big political stunt to raise some money.
Kristy, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is the Conservative leader. Actually, you could see it kind of in the video, which was posted on his own account. But he, I think is trying to give the base a bit of red meat. Honestly, I guess with the burgers that he also was serving to the caucus, and kind of trying to dial up that support and to show, as Bob and JD were mentioning, that they're really sticking it to the Liberals. I thought it was interesting. The Prime Minister came out. He was in the House of Commons this morning, and he came out and he had a big smile on his face, and he was asked about this, and he said, "No, we're not getting rid of the tax." And actually, I think that's the first time we've actually heard him use the language around we're not going to be axing the tax in relation to their carbon pricing regime. So the Liberals, saying they're using coffee and tea and other techniques to keep their side of the House awake. And yes, it is political theater, but also a moment where I think Poilievre is showing that he's kind of in touch with his caucus and showing to his supporters that they're really going to go after the Liberals in a big way, which they frankly have this session.
Okay, so the Conservatives seem proud of the fact that they've successfully obstructed the Liberal agenda, at least for a couple of days. But there's some pretty critical work left before the holidays, thinking of affordability measures, sustainable job legislation, the fall economic statement. Do you think Canadians view this as an appropriate use of Parliament's time? In one word, do they care? I'll start with you.
Well, it's Christmas holiday season approaching. I think most people are actually holiday shopping right now, Christmas holiday shopping. I don't think they think about politics. And in a very fundamental way, I don't think it does help, solidify the image of politicians in the eyes of Canadians when they spend so much time arguing by using parliamentary tricks whereas there are other issues that are very much pressing. Yes, this is a very issue that it goes to the core of the ideology of the Conservative Party, axe the tax, as they say it. But at the end of the day, the government has already passed most of its measures in terms of the price on pollution, and it's a way to try to force the hands of the government where it will not go. So at the end of the day, the result will be the same, no matter what, the tricks used by the Conservative Party in the House of Commons. So I don't think Canadians think that it matters that much.
Kristy?
Yeah, I mean, I know we're all political junkies, and this is interesting again to watch, and how everything is going down in the different techniques that are being used. But I'm always mindful to kind of take a step outside of the parliamentary precinct. I don't think that people are really tuned in to what is going on the floor of the House of Commons. Maybe they heard a news story that said that they were up all night, and there were some procedural techniques, but. Yeah, I don't actually think that this is going to resonate with a wide audience.
Bob, you
Well,
partly
the Liberals
answered.
are definitely trying to make hay of this, and so are the NDP. They look like they're joining at the hip and going after the Conservatives for specific measures that they say that they're blocking, whether it's affordability issues, for example, or support for Ukraine. But the fact of the matter, even if this legislation was passed this week or next week in the House of Commons, it still has to go to the Senate, and so we won't see that being dealt with until probably closer to the spring. So it's not really that pressing an issue, but I also agree with my two friends that I just don't think at this particular point Canadians are paying a hell of a lot of attention to this. In fact, there was a poll done on the economic statement, and it just dropped like a dead balloon. I mean, nobody was paying attention.
Okay, but there are just a few days in the sitting calendar for 2023, believe it or not. Parliament is supposed to adjourn next Friday for the holidays. So what are you watching for in the couple of days, in the few days?
There are polls that are showing that the Conservative Party has a wide lead. So I will be watching whether there will be some chatter about the future of the leadership of the Liberal Party, which is the Prime Minister. We had Mr. Trudeau yesterday in an editorial board meeting, and Mr. Trudeau made it clear that he wants to run again. But will Liberals start the chatter before we go and have the turkey dinner at Christmas? And that's, I think, going to be a critical moment for the leadership of the Liberal Party, I think, in my sense, whether Canadians have reached a conclusion that it's time for change. And that's, once Canadians have reached that conclusion, it's tough to change their minds.
Right.
I think we've reached that point right now, no matter what the Prime Minister says or no matter what the Liberal Party has as leader. I think we've reached that moment in the life of that government.
Have we reached that moment, Kristy?
Well, I do think that Justin Trudeau, as a politician, he prides himself on being the underdog. And I would point to the boxing match that happened between Patrick Brazeau and Justin Trudeau, where he thrived on the idea of being an underdog. And he is a fierce competitor, and we have seen that in elections. He also was a fierce campaigner. However, I think this moment has been very different than any other for Justin Trudeau since he has become leader. This sustained amount of pushback even from within his own caucus and questions about his own future. So, yes, he's trying to say in this interview and elsewhere, that he's still in it to win it and he wants to continue to fight. But again, if the caucus, and they are hearing it in their respective ridings, if there continue to be rumblings inside the caucus, it might not be a decision that he can make alone, right? He has to have that team behind him, and that has been a challenge over the course of many months to kind of bring the team together and to kind of believe that they believe that he is still the person to lead them. Given just looking at the poll numbers, Abacus data, in their latest survey, looking at a 19-point lead. This is significant, huge. Right? So that's why I think that yes, he might be a fighter and he wants to continue to play ball, but this is a moment unlike any other that we've seen for Justin Trudeau.
Would you say that too?
Yeah, look, since 1945, nobody has gone past 9 or 10 years as Prime Minister. His father did, but he lost first, and Joe Clark blew it, and so Pierre Trudeau came back. It's be a real challenge for him to win the next election campaign, because I just think, and the polls are showing this, even though we're off for an election maybe next year or in the fall, I could see the Liberals actually trying to have an election in the fall and try to paint Pierre Poilievre as Donald Trump. And that, if they're going to do anything, it probably is maybe an opportune time for them to do that. But boy, people are kind of really sick of Trudeau, and it's really hard to turn that around. And the historical record is there.
Okay, so 2 more minutes. I won't let you go just now. So, Joël-Denis, your paper had a year-end sit-down with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. What were the takeaways? He said he's going to say.
And that's an interesting point, because we spent about 25 minutes of the 50 minutes interview we had with him talk about his future. And he mentioned that he had, at some point this summer, thought about maybe it's time to go. So he offered that, and the reason why he had that reflection was because the security of his family, he's not sure he can guarantee that as much as possible. But I think he
seemed concerned.
Yeah, he seems very concerned about the security of his family, given the political context. We're post-COVID. We had the convoy in Ottawa. We've seen people throw rocks at his camping bus in 2021. And every time he goes out in some areas, he gets, not a very welcoming reception. But he's made up his mind, and that he's going straight ahead, because he feels that he's the best position to beat Pierre Poilievre or prevent Poilievre from winning. The other elements we talked about was the state of the public finance. And on that point, he hasn't changed his mind, despite the fact that next year will be more in high interest rate on the debt than on other items in the budget, which is, to me, is so surprising, because the Liberals' success in the past have been explained by the fact that they were able to attract Blue Liberals. The Blue Liberals are leaving the Liberal Party right now because of the way they manage their finance.
Okay, quickly, Bob. He said also, Justin Trudeau, that an election isn't happening anytime soon. Should we take his word?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Not those numbers. He ain't calling an election campaign. But I don't think we should rule out a possibility of an election next fall in line with the U.S. elections. This would be an opportunity for the Liberals to really try to jam Poilievre and paint him as a Trump person. But the polls may not work for them there. And if not case, for sure we're having one in 2025. We have no choice.
Quickly, last one. Kristy, would you agree?
Yeah, I think to Bob's point, the NDP also doesn't, by the way, want to put ripcord in the supply and confidence agreement, because they too, have many reasons not to want to see an election. So you have this kind of union between the Liberals and the NDP, despite the fact that pharmacare legislation, by the way, not only hasn't been passed per the terms of that agreement, but it hasn't even been introduced yet. But the NDP and the Liberals are willing to work together. Why? Because they're kind of awkward dance partners right now, and they want to fend off the Conservatives.
Kristy, Joël-Denis, Bob, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Catherine.